thing. We're trying to do it in different ways, and hopefully you will enjoy and find these useful. You can put any other questions online on the teams, which we'll be moving on to soon, but I'll explain that on an email. Um, but this one is the work I set you, which is just the initial stuff about different types of pressure groups and their methods. So I could talk through it. Now, you don't need to use the exact examples I've got. As long as you've found some examples, that's fine. Now, I'm just giving you some that I've thought of and just really explain some stuff about them. So, first thing we need to look at is the different types. And we're looking at really sectional, causal, and within those, we're then looking at insider and outsider. Those sectional ones, really, we're looking at those groups that look after their own. They represent a section of society, they represent a group of people, and it is only those people that are really going to be in that pressure group. So, the BMI, British Medical Association, so BMA, British Medical Association, you're not really going to be in that. There's no point of you being in that. You're probably not allowed to be in that if you're not a medical professional. Same with NUS, National Union of Students. Why you're not going to get anyone in there who isn't a student? So what you have there is the type of pressure group that really looks after those that are its members, and those that are its members tend to be either from a certain area, a certain group, or usually a certain profession. Next one is a causal group. Now, these are groups that look out for a certain cause, and actually, it doesn't really tie into a certain person. So you're not going to get a causal group that is just filled with doctors. Causal groups, a really good one is looking at sort of environmental factors, and those people who might be a member of a pressure group that cares for environmental factors could be really varied. Could be wealthy, could be less wealthy, could be well educated, not so well educated, could be full-time worker, part-time worker, unemployed. There really isn't a group. Now these groups tend to look out for that cause. So if it's an environmental one, if it's about lowering pollution, then actually they're trying to do it on behalf of society. Now, causal groups can clash with one another. So if you're thinking about smoking, you have notable anti-smoking, notable pro-smoking groups. They are going to clash. If there are some which you will tend to find people are more on one side than the other. So things on vivisection, for example, you're going to find more that's sort of anti-vivisection than pro. But you can get both. So those are groups where you get people who cover a wide range of areas. It represents those that are members, but its main goal is representing all of society and making, in their eyes, a positive change towards the whole of society. And within both of those, you get insider and outsider groups. It really does give it away by the title. But when I talk about what they are inside or outside, it's their relationship with the government. Now, some are going to be insiders. They're going to be close links to the government. Others are outsiders, and they don't really want links to the government. Now, there are reasons for that. If you are an insider group, you work closely with the government, you work closely with ministers, you work closely with advisors. That is how you get things done. You speak to them all the time, you see what they want, you try to explain how what you want fits in with their policies, and it is really important to you. Now, if you're an outsider group, you might say, well, actually, I don't want to be working within those circles. I don't want to be talking to ministers secretly in the corridors of power. I want to be motivating people. I want to be energizing people. I want to have the public really passionate about an issue. So some pressure groups are outsiders, and they are proud outsiders. They wouldn't be anything else, because for them, making the change isn't just about a legal change. It's actually about a cultural change. So if you're thinking of certain environmental groups, yeah, some of them will say, well, it's useful to get legislative changes, but actually what you need is people to change the way they behave, the way they drive, the use of carrier bags, the using public transport. So with that, you have some that are insiders and want to be insiders, and what you do find with insiders actually that quite a few of them people will never have heard of. For them, publicity and being known isn't of most importance. For them, it is smaller numbers of people know what they do, and it is making a change quietly. Whereas for outsiders, it can be more cultural, and it can be about making mass change and getting people to pursue that change, not just the pressure group. We've asked you to look at your to do a research task on an insider and outsider pressure group, and those were the New Schools Network and Greenpeace. And there will be another video where I look at those two in a bit more detail and explain what they stand for and what they represent. But the other part of the work for this video was going through the methods on page 229 of your textbook and trying to find examples for each one. Now, some of them are a little bit trickier than others, but what I've tried to do is give you some examples that if you are stuck, then you can use one of these. But ideally, you'd want to be using something that is as recent as possible. You want to be think of something that you've seen happen or that you've understood happen. And also, this is the thing with the politics course, is that you've got to be looking out in the news, reading the papers, and seeing what is happening and tying it back to your course. So let's start going through these. Lobbying. Now, this primarily happens as an insider group. You're looking at groups that speak with politicians, civil servants, advisors, and trying to get them to change bits of legislation. Now, if you're an insider group, sometimes it's about having mass changes to your to legislation, but a lot of the time it's small changes. It's little changes that make the difference, and those are the things that can make it a lot easier for you. And so one of the ones I've got is the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, have very close links with the government. Insider status a lot of the time means that actually you're trusted by the government, that if the government wants advice, then they will come to you. And that ties in with the next one, the BMI. But the CBI, they work very close with government to support the interests of British industry, British businesses, and are often closely linked with MPs in sort of trying to guide policy or create a direction of policy. Other groups, the research and publish reports. So I've example is BMI, but there's others on this list. Countryside Alliance and Greenpeace, the next two actually are both the same in that they do research. They will have professionals. They will have, I say researchers, but that's a given. Sort of professors, doctors, that kind of thing, doing research into different matters and then publishing reports about it. Now, these reports are quite useful because they don't necessarily need to be speaking to the politician. The politicians can pick them up. Politicians can read the reports and see how they feel maybe their legislative changes need to take action. But it's a good way, especially if you're something like the BMI, again, Countryside Alliance, Greenpeace. Politicians will trust them on their opinion. If you are the BMI, then actually you are medical professionals, and the research and the reports you provide are going to be trusted in regards to medical matters. So actually the BMI, Countryside Alliance and Greenpeace could all count for this one and giving evidence at hearings. Giving evidence at hearings, there's two different ways that you look at this. Is one, you're looking at consultations, select committees, that kind of thing. One is pressure groups sort of forcing themselves into these to try and give their opinion. So if you've got something on, let's say, fox hunting, if you've got something on badger culls, then actually the Countryside Alliance will want to be at a hearing and giving the opinion of their members. But on the flip side, actually the government will, in some cases, it wouldn't require the Countryside Alliance to force themselves into a hearing. The government will insist that they are there. They will want someone like the Countryside Alliance to help provide two sides of an argument to explain how something works. You've got publicity campaigns, so Greenpeace, a really good example of those. And again, I will talk about Greenpeace more in a future video. Next one, organising public demonstrations. Now, this is really interesting actually because we're talking here about marches and rallies, and you've obviously got the ones from a few years ago, the pro EU march in London. That was what, 1 million people? I think it was estimated at. It's similar to during the Iraq War, the Stop the War Coalition march, still like similarly 1 million people. Now, what is the thing that you noticed about those two, the pro EU march and the Stop the War march? That despite having 1 million people, or allegedly 1 million people there, they didn't stop the Iraq War, and it's not stopped Brexit. So this is an interesting method actually, because in one hand you're looking and thinking this is a really good way to tell the government, to tell the country how many people feel, but it isn't right in this case, and there are a lot of examples where it doesn't work, and it shows passion, it shows how people feel, but does it make government change their mind? Not necessarily. So an interesting one to see, and actually that makes you think about some of these others. How useful are these different methods? What are the best methods? So moving on to some of the others, publicity stunts. So Farms for Justice, not seeing the news as much recently, but going back a few years, Farms for Justice were very prominent, known for having those people involved in the stunts dressed as superheroes. It really brought attention to what they as a pressure group were doing, and that's what they wanted out of it. They didn't, they wanted legislative change. What they needed was exposure. What they needed people was to be talking about the issue. What they wanted was people to be saying, well, actually, do fathers have equal rights? Is it fair on fathers during divorces? And it got people talking about it. Moving on to civil disobedience. I think this is a tricky one in the UK. I mean, you look at somewhere like America, you can find really good examples of civil disobedience in other countries. The UK, it can be a little bit trickier, so you can talk about something like the Occupy movement. But I thought a really interesting one is I'll send you some articles for this, but sort of anti-abortion groups that actually you have got a rise of people protesting outside abortion clinics. Now they will sit there, they'll have some placards. I mean, it is disobedience, but they aren't stopping anyone from walking in. So I think that's a really interesting one. You do get some which are a little bit more illegal, so causing maybe a sitting in a private building. And with those ones, you are looking at that as quite a final sort of push, the last chance to actually make a change. Next one, gun strikes. So really, you're looking at trade unions there. The RMT, Rail and Maritime Workers Trade Union. Is that what it is? I'll double check that. Rail Maritime Transport Workers Union. Sorry, that was what it is. You think about Southern Rail recently with strikes in regards to having conductors or just train drivers on there. So it's a way of bringing a focus on an issue for a sectional group. Really, and this is really mainly just a sectional group. You're not going to find a causal group using this. A celebrity spokesperson, so a really good example of that is Justice for Gurkhas with Joanna Lumley, an issue which had been a pressure group which had been running for a while, but was actually having that celebrity spokesperson was able to draw the attention to it and actually made it successful in the